How old would you have been there?
I was 15, nearly 16.
So what are your memories of the support that Sir Alex would offer to young players around this time?
Obviously, massive in terms of he had a really good relationship with the academy, and whenever they agreed to keep me on as a scholar and then eventually give me my first professional contract, we got invited into Sir Alex's dressing room before the game. And my mum and dad were there, and we got a beautiful photograph with him, and obviously my mum and dad were on the other photo that he didn't show. And then he showed us all around the dressing room, and we met the players before the game against Fulham and went up and sat in the box, and he didn't have to do that. That was one of the things that was a real touch of class that we always look back on and we think, do you know what, that inspired me. And I went home that day and I was like, do you know what, Dad, I want to be like that. I want to be potentially in that first team dressing room one day and do it my way. But at that point I was still a baby, so you don't realise how naive you are at the time in terms of football and stuff like that.
Well, let's talk then about the first team, because eventually you get offered a professional contract, right, at Manchester United. And I think the really interesting thing that maybe people either don't know or may have forgotten is that you signed a pro deal and it was 4 years till you kicked a ball in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. So that moment when you sign, you think, this is it, this is the moment, here I go, I'm now going to be a professional footballer. How challenging was that period there where you were so close to getting it, but for various reasons it was a long wait?
Do you know what? When you look back at it now and you realise the standard and the levels in the first team, whenever you first go over, it is a little bit mind blowing, and you're going over there with a little bit of like the bee in the bonnet, thinking that I'm the man and I can come and train with you, and then you see the standard of the players that you're playing with. It's high level, and it's sink or swim. You have to do your best to show people that you're ready and that you're capable of performing in that team.
Half asleep in bed, it must have been 8 o'clock in the morning, and this voice comes on and says, "Phil, Sir Alex here." I'm not going to try and do that again.
Did he call himself Sir Alex?
I can't even remember.
Go on, sorry, let's stop.
And I've literally shot out of bed, so my girlfriend, my wife's going, "What's going on?" And then he just said, he basically along the lines of, "We'd love to have you at the club. Like, I've loved watching you. I know everything about you, and I'd love you to come out to Nice, to come and see me and have a chat with me." So I went out to meet him in Nice with my agent, David Gill. I'm absolutely bricking it. And he didn't ask me for half an hour, 40 minutes, I promise you, he didn't ask me one question on football. It was, how's your family? How's your mum? How's your dad? What were your grades like at school? I was just like, is he going to ask me a football?
And how did that make you feel?
Relaxed. It made me feel so relaxed. And it wasn't intimidating as you thought it would be. Now I've met with other managers and it's been quite intimidating. I'm only a young kid at the time, obviously. But he made me feel so relaxed, even though I'm still on edge a little bit. So he asked me all these questions about my grades and my scores and all these other things. And then my agent came down. Then he started to talk about football a little bit. And I watched you in this game. And, I love your passion for the 7-1 you made reference to. And then at the end, I remember the last thing he said to me, and it still gives me shivers now. Like, he said to me, he looked into my eyes and he said, "Phil, are you a winner, son?" And I was like, yeah. I said, in my head, I'm thinking, where do I sign?
So those questions Ferguson was asking you about, like your parents and your school grades and things like that, what do you think he was trying to find out about you?
My mentality, how I was as a person, how I carried myself. Because I don't think the reason why I was there, because he never had any doubt about my attributes towards football.
Yeah.
But he wanted to know what I was like as a person. Right. And I think today, I have ambitions of going down the coaching route and going into management myself. And I think that's such a huge and critical part about football these days. Like, time's moved on now. I think you have to understand every single player. And every single player has got their own goals and ambitions and been on their own journeys, and it's about understanding every individual. And for me, Sir Alex was the best at that. He knew exactly every individual person in that group. He knew where they were, he knew what they were getting up to, he knew everything about the family, and that is so important. And I think that's sort of been lost in translation in the last few years, and not just at United, but I think just in football as a whole.
You know who we all want to be? That person, the one who's meal prepping. They've got their organic grain bowls, they come in with their quinoa, all of that stuff. We know they're also getting a full 8 hours sleep, meditating before sunrise, never rowing with anyone, and just hitting it every time. But let's be real, Who has the time for that? Like me, you've probably got loads to juggle: kids, work, exercise, pretending that you've got everything together at the same time, and something has to give. And for me, traditionally, that was energy. And then I discovered Vitals by Heights. And these changed so much for me. Just 2 capsules, the job is done so fast. And then I know for the rest of the day, my irons, my B vitamins, my immune system's being looked after. I've got zinc for bone health, omega-3 and DHA for normal heart health. Honestly, the lot is packed into these golden little beauties. And as we see on the High Performance show so often, high performers aren't perfect. They've just worked out the smart things that make a difference. So why don't you do right by your brain, your body and your health? Head to heights.com/Jake or enter the code HP20 at checkout for 20% off your first order.
People talk about, obviously, the question that I get asked, well, so many times, why was Ferguson so good? But one of the things was his man management skills were second to none. His communication qualities was excellent. But part of that quality is communication, was listening. He was such a good listener, really good listener. And he would extract what he thought is valuable and he would use it from anybody.
To describe what that's like then, to be really listened to by him.
I mean, a lot of times when we were watching a game, we were sitting on the bench together, the game revolves, and I knew what we've done in training. And we were watching a game, whether good and bad and everything. I knew over time that always about 10 minutes before half time, he would always sort of throw a question at me, what do you think? Or is there anything we need to change or adapt or whatever? And I would always, look back to obviously what we did in training. Are we doing what we set out to do? If not, what's the problem, whatever. Yeah. So we had these sort of really short, sharp 2-minute discussions where I sort of aired my views. And he would just listen. And whatever he thought was valuable to take in the dressing room, he would, use it in the dressing room. And obviously, like I said, he was his experience shone through so many occasions in that. I remember the game against Tottenham at home. And I thought that was absolutely a masterstroke. And we weren't playing well. That was Modric was still playing for Tottenham. He had a really good game against us. I think they were 2-0 up at half time. And we weren't playing badly at all. We just conceded. They took the chance to concede it. And that's also what I said to the manager. It says, it's not that we're playing bad. It's not like that the work rate is on the par. It's just that, yes, we can have a look at it, with a magnifying glass. Should he have done better in that position? But I think if we maybe been able to Tottenham will try to hold on to that too. They won't go for a third. So I assume we're going to really push them back in our own half. It's just, but we really need to unsettle them. Yeah. So we need to give them something else to throw about. So we go in the dressing room, and he didn't make much of those 2 goals behind. He didn't go into it 2-0 down and all, none.
See, so let me just jump in there, because the public perception is that, like the hairdryer is going in there, he's kicking off. That's not what happened.
I mean, in the 6 years that I've been at Manchester United with him in the dressing room, I might maybe once or twice that I felt he raised his voice in another way what he normally would. But in that case, he didn't. He sort of basically settled everybody down and said, calm down, I think we're playing great. 2-0 down, boss. No, but of course we can talk about the goals. I don't want to talk about that. It's just, listen, we're going to throw something at them they can't deal with. We made a few changes. We brought Carlos Tevez on, hunting them down and all this and that and the other. I think we made another one. I can't remember. But the biggest thing was this. He said, listen, I know we're going to score. But when we score 1, we're going to score 3. Now just think about that mentally, what it does to the players and on the pitch. So when they scored 1 goal, they didn't settle down. Oh, no, we have to score another 2. That was just a masterstroke for me. And we ended up winning that game 5-2. 5-2. There was nobody that went on that pitch worried about we were 2-0 down. We're going to score 3 goals. And probably more, but we're going to score 3 goals. Just brilliant.